Hello students, I am Sam sir and we are in the second part of this chapter number 5 of geography. Book is Fundamentals of Human Geography. Chapter is Primary Activities. If you haven't seen the first part, I advise you to do that. Now we are talking about extensive commercial grain cultivation. Now this means this is practiced in interior parts of semi-arid lands of mid latitudes, and the main crops are the ones which are mainly eaten in that country as well as which can be sold out, such as wheat, corn, barley, oats, and rye. All the operations from ploughing to harvesting are mechanized. This is because of very large size of the farms. The yield per acre is low, but the yield per person is high because only a few laborers work and they are using modern machines. This type of agriculture is best developed in Eurasian steppes, the Canadian and American prairies, the pampas of Argentina, the velds of South Africa, the Australian Downs, and the Canterbury Plains of New Zealand. This is a picture of to show mixed farming. The same land is used at the same time for a variety of crops. Such farming is done highly developed parts of the world, such as northwestern Europe, eastern North America, parts of Eurasia, and the temperate latitudes of southern continents. The mixed farms are moderate in size, they are neither too big nor too small, and the usual crops for mixed farming are wheat, barley, oats, rye, maize, fodder, and root crops. Crop rotation is done and intercropping is also practiced, and both are done to maintain soil fertility. Crop rotation, as you know, is to keep on interchanging crops each time. Suppose there's wheat planted now and it's harvested, next time you put another leguminous crop such as groundnut, and when that is harvested, you plant barley and again groundnut or any other leguminous plant which will keep the soil fertile. Intercropping is one row of crop X, then crop Y, crop X, one next row, crop Y next row, like that. That's intercropping. The same emphasis as that for cultivation of crops is also laid on animal husbandry, and animals such as cattle, sheep, pigs, and poultry birds, they provide the main income along with crops. So here we are doing agriculture also and animal husbandry also on the same land. So mixed farming incurs high expenditure on farm machinery and buildings. It uses chemical fertilizers and green manures extensively. The farmers are also needed to be skillful and experts in their fields. Let's talk about dairy farming now. Dairy farming includes rearing milch animals. Milch animals are the ones which give milk. Modern dairy farming is very advanced and efficient. This farming is also very capital intensive. It requires infrastructure such as animal sheds, storage facilities for fodder, feeding and milking machines, and emphasis laid on cattle breeding, healthcare, and veterinary services. Also required is after the milk is drawn, after the milking is done, it has to be either pasteurized or it has to be shipped, transported raw to a dairy plant where pasteurization and packing can be done. And also, this has to be done in a good time, otherwise, the milk spoils. Dairy farming is very labor intensive as it involves detailed caring for the animals. Dairy farming is an all season occupation, unlike the agriculture. It is practiced near urban and industrial centers because they provide the market for dairy products, and also if they are nearer the better. Development of transportation, refrigeration, pasteurization, and other preservation processes have increased the duration of storage of dairy products. The milk is transported in special vehicles such as this stainless steel tanks, and sometimes the tanks are refrigerated also. The largest region for dairy farming is the northwestern Europe. The second largest is Canada, and the third zone, which is also a major producer of dairy products, is southeastern Australia, New Zealand, and Tasmania. Now we talk about Mediterranean agriculture. This is a highly specialized commercial agriculture, and this is possible because of the Mediterranean climate and the soil there. It is practiced in countries on either side of the Mediterranean Sea in Europe and in North Africa from Tunisia to Atlantic coast, southwestern part of South Africa, and south and southwestern parts of Australia. Because the climates are similar and different crops are grown, especially orchards, because the soil there and the crop and the climate supports such crops. This region grows a lot of citrus fruits. Viticulture is the uh, cultivation of grapes, and this is a specialty of the Mediterranean region. Various countries of this region produce variety of high quality grapes with distinctive flavors, and these are used for the best quality grape juice. Wines with W are different. They may or may not contain any portion of any fraction of alcohol. Alcohol is produced only after fermentation, and even freshly squeezed grape juice is also termed as wine. Olives and figs are also produced in this region because this climate and soil supports these fruits. Fruits and vegetables are more valuable crops which are produced in winters when there is a great demand in Europe and North America for this. This is a picture of viticulture, uh, growing of grapes, and then you have the figs and the olives. Both are in great demand. We talk about market gardening and horticulture. High value crops such as vegetables, fruits, and flowers are solely produced for urban markets. This type of agriculture needs, firstly, small farms. Secondly, the location. They should be located where there are good transportation links with urban centers because we don't want the vegetables to spoil before they reach the market. Thirdly, very high income group consumers in the marketplace, those who can afford these products. This is also labor intensive and capital intensive. When it comes to flowers, you have crocus, which is a flower from which you get the saffron or the saffron, and it's growing in certain regions of Kashmir. And it's the cultivation is reducing in quantity and in the area because the farmers there do not find it profitable anymore. Important to this type of agriculture are use of irrigation, high yield variety seeds, fertilizers, insecticides, greenhouses, and artificial heating in if the farming is done in colder regions. It is well developed in densely populated industrial districts of developed countries. Often they do that in greenhouses under controlled conditions. Now there's a term called truck farming. This is not done on trucks, but this means that the governing factor here is a distance a truck can cover overnight. The region where farmers specialize only in vegetable and the produce can be taken to a city overnight. That is known as truck farming. When you consider Mumbai, you have surrounding areas where vegetables are grown, Some of it, very little is grown in Mumbai. But if you look at Nasik and Pune and Ratnagiri, uh, this side, the distance is a few hour journey by truck. So the vegetables are harvested, loaded onto trucks, and the trucks fly to Mumbai and reach there early in the morning before the usual traffic starts. Now, there's something known as factory farming. Factory farming is a modern development in industrial regions of developed countries, and livestock, that is, poultry and cattle rearing, is done in stalls and pens, fed on manufactured meal and carefully supervised against diseases. If you contrast this with the cattle keeping we have in India, our cattle they roam on the streets, and then we don't have control over what they eat. They frequently fall sick and they require care. And because they eat things which they should not, or the nutritional value is less, they produce less milk also. And then they become prone to diseases because they are roaming outside. Now, in factory farming, all these problems are avoided because these cattle are kept in pens and stalls. This needs heavy capital investment, infrastructure and machinery. You require veterinary services at on hand. You require heating and lighting and all that because you're keeping animals for production for making profits. Also, when this is done, you just don't keep any animal, but you select the breed first, and also scientific breeding is done, and this is done for both poultry and cattle rearing. And types of farming can also be categorized as per the farming organization. Now, we are in the next topic known as farming organization. This takes into consideration whether the farms farmers own their farms and various policies of the government which help run these farms. This is an example of factory farming for poultry. This actually looks like a factory. Excuse my throat. Farmers form a cooperative society. They pool in their resources, and that they do voluntarily for more efficient and profitable farming. Farming is done on the farmer's own farm and is a matter of cooperative initiative. Cooperative societies help farmer to procure inputs of farming, also to sell the products at a reasonable price and help processing of the products, and also get assistance about technological and work related aspects. These are the seven elements of cooperative farming. You have the food production, distribution and aggregation, the processing of food, the marketing of the food products, and markets and purchasing for the purpose, then the preparation, consumption, and resources and waste recovery, and then food production again. When we look back at the history of cooperative farming, this originated over a century ago, and it is rather successful in Western European countries even today. This is practically every farmer is a member of a cooperative society in Denmark. But India is altogether different story. India too has got farmers cooperative societies, but most of the farmers prefer to struggle on their own. Our farmers are not organized, and they struggle on their own. They have needs, but they don't have the means. Don't want to share uh, um, their assets, nor are they willing to take help from outside till situation becomes very drastic. Another, there are two basic principles of collective farming. One is social ownership of the means of production, and the second is collective labor. And there was a model called kolkhoz of collective farming. This was introduced in the erstwhile Soviet Union. Its aim was to improve upon the inefficiencies of the previous methods of agriculture and to increase production for self sufficiency. The farmers used to pool in their resources, but they were allowed to retain small plots of land to grow crops to meet their daily requirements. When we say pooling in of the resources, let us talk in the Indian context. There's a farmer, he's got the land, but he doesn't know which seed is best. So, if it is a cooperative, he can take advice from somebody who is knowledgeable. Or there's a farmer who's having problem with pests, and he doesn't know what to put, what is best. So he can take advice from somebody who knows. There's a farmer who has got everything, but he doesn't have the machinery, and machinery is required only for a certain period, only a few days per season, and after that the machine is just lying till the next season. So it's better that farmers cooperate and they do farming on their land with the same machine, uh, uh, one after another, and they share the costs. There are farming cooperative societies which can give loans. These facilities are available but underutilized in our country. Now let's talk about mining, because this is also related to the uh, lithosphere. This is taken as a primary occupation. Mining means to extract minerals from the earth. This is also a primary activity because the minerals are found in the nature, and any economic activity, to remind you, directly linked with atmosphere, atmosphere, or lithosphere or biosphere is termed as primary activity. Now, development of mining began with the Industrial Revolution because then there was more demand for metals, for example. In turn, industrial growth depends on mining. Now, broadly, there are two factors: physical and economic factors, which affect the mining activity. In physical factors, there is the size and grade and the type in which the deposits occur. By type, we mean uh, the chemical composition also. Grade, we mean what is the percentage of yield of a particular metal. And size means what is the size of the mine. Is it very big, or is it can good quality ore be obtained from a small area? In economic factors, first is what is the demand for the mineral. Then, is the technology available to extract that mineral, and can it be used? And is there capital available to develop the infrastructure? And of course, point number four, it should be that is the labor and transport costs. Now, method of mining depends on two things. First is the form in which the mineral occurs. Is it some oxide, for example, or sulfide, or the pure metal? And the second is the nature of the ore. Accordingly, mining is of two types: either surface mining, which is also known as open cast mining, or underground mining, also known as mining. So this diagram shows the different types of mining. Everything is not there in your syllabus. This is surface mining or open cast mining. Here, the machinery is on the surface. They just keep collecting ores from the surface. This is surface mining. Open cast mining is surface mining, and this is the easiest and the cheapest way of mining. The minerals that occur close to the surface are mined in open cast mines, and there needs safety precautions, but not as much as in deep mines. Such mining can also be done with rather basic equipment, and the output is both large and rapid. Then we look at the shaft mining. The shaft is like you dig down deep. Here's one person climbing down a mine. This was also known as rabbit trap holes. The shaft method mining or the underground mining is used for ore lying much deeper below the surface of Earth. And vertical shafts are sunk from where underground galleries radiate to reach the minerals. And mining wagons on rails or buckets are used to extract and transport the minerals to the surface through these galleries. You can see the rails here and the trolley, and on the surface it looks like this, as on the right, whereas actually it's a system of pulleys. Because these ores are heavy, they require to be pulled out on the rails. This type of mining requires specialized equipment such as um, specially designed lifts, drills, haulage vehicles, ventilation system for safety, because a lot of gases are also there below, which are harmful. You don't want the roof of the mine to cave in, and you don't want water to fill up the holes, and you require efficient movement of people and material. This method is risky because of the danger of poisonous gases, fires. If there is methane and if there's fire underground, then it will kill the people who are working there. Then floods and caving in of the mine roof leads to death. Sorry. There are some equipments which are used in uh, deep mining. Let's talk about challenges and opportunities. High labor costs discourage developed economies from mining, processing, and refining of ores and minerals. They better buy the goods from other countries. Developing countries have a large labor force. Such countries also strive for higher standard of living. Since mining enables exploiting natural resources, bringing extra income to the country, mining is given priority in developing countries. More than 50% of the earnings come from mining alone. In several countries of Africa and some South American and Asian countries, that shows the importance of uh, mining in developing countries. This is another chapter. Give it a thumbs up and subscribe to the channel. And I have already posted the notes of this chapter on your group. Go through that carefully, and we'll discuss the chapter in our online classes. Bye then.